4.6. Discussing scaling strategies. Business-aligned reasoning. When candidates talk about scaling, many of them jump straight to technical tricks. They start talking about clusters, load balancers, replicas, shards, and very quickly the answer turns into noise. But real scaling does not start with servers. It starts with a simple question. What exactly is growing? Is it the number of users? Is it the size of the data? Is it the frequency of requests? Or is it the complexity of what each request has to do? Different growth creates different problems and different solutions. So when you're explaining scaling in an interview, the smartest thing you can do is slow down and connect technology to reality. You might say, traffic increased during certain hours, response times grew, and users started noticing delays. Now, scaling has a purpose. You're not scaling because cloud. You're scaling because the business is feeling pain. Once that context is clear, then you talk about strategy. Sometimes the simplest move is vertical scaling, making one machine more powerful. It's fast, it's simple, it works until it doesn't. Eventually, there is always a bigger peak and a limit you cannot cross anymore. That's when horizontal scaling becomes interesting. Instead of one giant server, you add more small ones and let traffic spread across them. Suddenly, the system can grow by adding more copies instead of buying one huge machine. But now you have to think about coordination, consistency, and failover. You've solved one problem and invited new ones. And that's okay, as long as you acknowledge it. Then there are situations where scaling is not about machines at all. Sometimes the database design is the real bottleneck. Sometimes one service is doing too much and needs to be split. Sometimes caching turns out to be the biggest performance improvement because many requests were simply asking the same question again and again. In other words, scaling is not purely technical. Scaling is diagnosis. You look at metrics. You see where time is spent. You find out what part of the system is actually under pressure, and only then do you decide what to scale. That's why strong interview answers sound more like medical reasoning than like hardware shopping. Instead of saying, "We added more servers," you say, "We noticed slowdowns during peak traffic, profiled the system, and discovered that one service and the database were overloaded. We introduced replicas, optimized queries, and added caching to reduce unnecessary work." Same problem, completely different maturity level. The final piece of the story is cost. Scaling always costs something. Maybe it costs money because cloud resources increase. Maybe it costs complexity because the architecture becomes harder to understand. Maybe it costs reliability because distributed systems fail in new and creative ways. Senior engineers never forget that part. They ask, is this level of scaling worth it for the business? What happens if we double again? Do we have a plan? So when you talk about scaling in interviews, aim for this feeling. Calm, thoughtful, realistic. You are not chasing performance for ego. You are designing systems that grow at the same pace as the needs of the people using them. And that is what real scaling is about. As systems grow, visibility becomes everything. Next, we'll explore observability and reliability, the real signs of senior thinking. End of 4.6.